listening to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network, the nonprofit organization that strives to address the staggering disparity in resource availability for individuals suffering from mental health disorders, processing disorders, addictions, trauma healing, and sexual identity challenges. Together, we strive to end the stigma associated with these challenges so that true healing can begin. Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network. I'm your host, and welcome you to episode number 41. Today's guest is Matt Scott, author of the Surviving the Lion's Den thriller trilogy, which debuted in 2021. Matt earned his bachelor's degree in political science and history from Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia. When he was there, he studied under former Director of Defense Intelligence Agency General Sam Wilson, which kicked off his passion for espionage, CIA, Middle East politics, double agents, and the like. We will talk about all of these things and how they fed into the trilogy story during our interview. Now, in this episode, however, why are we really talking to him? Because Matt really wanted to share how he overcame depression and utilized his strengths to pursue his goals. We talk a lot about the impact of horrible bosses and companies and why we both believe life is too short to endure either one for any longer than you have to. It is a must-listen-to episode if you need the extra boat of courage to do some brave and badass things. This episode is packed full of motivation. In fact, I believe it will be impossible for anyone to come away from this episode without feeling pumped for the next big adventure. So, enough of this. Let's do it. But first, remember what our 3C rules for engagement are. And the first is please click that subscribe button and click the notifications one as well to make sure you do not miss future episodes. 2, commit to listening to the full episode. There are so many nuggets of wisdom in this episode. If you miss them, you will be sad. You won't even know you're sad, but you will be sad. I promise you we will. And then 3, what's our 3C? Oh, it's coffee, of course. So fill up your coffee, sit back, relax, and let's get started. So listeners, I went ahead and pressed start because we're talking about dogs and puppies and the insanity. So here will be my teaser for all the listeners to see. Like, you have to stay until the end of this episode because only at the end of the episode will you know whether or not Matt Scott, who is self-proclaimed in his bio as a golden retriever wrangler already, is now describing the one of his that knows how to open doors in his office.
He does. Yeah, and he's not very shy about it either.
Alrighty, well, how about we have a conversation? Sound good?
Absolutely. Fire away.
Let's do it. Alrighty, well, listeners, I'm super excited to have author Matt Scott here today. And Matt, I will share all of your amazing details that you put in your bio in the intro that I will record later. So I really want the listeners, I'm really big about people getting to know humans as humans. So I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell the audience what you would like for them to know about you and why you chose to be on this podcast today.
Well, I guess the short answer on everything is that I have been in the corporate world for 20 plus years, and only recently have I, become a published author. So my third book in the Surviving the Lion's Den series came out this past March. It's called The Ayatollah Takedown. But I had like a very strange beginning. So I went to college at a small liberal arts college outside of Richmond, Virginia called Hampton-Sydney College, and I kind of started honing my writing skills, and I was under the tutelage of General Sam Wilson. He used to be the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, so that's kind of where I got my claws into the spy world. And then I just kind of started reading, and I was never a big reader, never a big reader. I hated Watership Down and The Good Earth.
Oh
I
my
hated
gosh,
all
you're
those.
breaking every
And
stereotype. No, first off, I want to share that we do have a little bit of 6 degrees of separation, Kevin Bacon kind of style. My
oh, really?
cousin my cousin went to Hampton Sydney. And so when I was reading
Really?
your bio, I mean, it's just a small school, right? So when I
Yeah,
was reading your
yeah.
bio, I was like, what are the odds? Yeah, Dan Gill, he went to Hampton Sydney as well. So, but a stereotype of an author who has now published his 3rd book, who isn't that big of a reader. And I don't know, you have a lot of books behind you on your bookcase. So
Yeah,
I'm just going
yeah.
to say.
It changed. Things changed. Things changed. So, yeah, I hated read. I mean, the required reading between high school and college, I just couldn't stand. So, but then the Da Vinci Code phenomenon kind of hit everybody, including myself. And then I got my claws into, guys like Brad Thor and Vince Flynn and Joel Rosenberg, and just kind of steamrolled from there. And then obviously after 9/11 happened, I wanted to know everything about why that happened. What were the intelligence failures? And a few years after that, everybody started coming out with nonfiction books about the intelligence agencies and all the experiences that the agents had over in Afghanistan and things like that. So it really gave me the opportunity to start learning about the spy world, and it gave birth to what is considered the golden age of the spy thriller with Vince Flynn and Brad Thor and those guys. So it it was born out of that. And once I started reading those guys, I couldn't stop. So I kept doing that for a few years, and I was still in the corporate world, and I just wasn't happy. I mean, I was not where I thought I wanted to be. I was with a company that I couldn't move up, and I couldn't get out of. So I finally decided to try and write a book, and I went to Williamsburg, Virginia. David Baldacci, big name, big time author that people should know, and he was having a book signing. I was like, "Well, it's getting ready to be my 40th birthday next year. Is it too late to write your first novel?" And I kid
I
you
love
not, he
this.
stopped mid signature and looked up at me and said, "Hell no." The industry could use some good young authors. So I didn't know if I should be happier that he thought 40 was young, or that he was telling me to go ahead and do this. But my first novel, yeah. So my
Yes
first
and
novel,
yes. That's
yes,
what
yeah,
we call that a
exactly, yeah,
win-win.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I came home. I think I started, really developing the characters. I started. That was in November, and I think by February started putting words to paper. So out of that came Surviving the Lion's Den, which was, and I'm going to pick you up because my dog is scratching to go out. After that. Surviving the Lion's Den kind of came out of that, and then I got my publisher deal for the 3 books, and that's where I'm at now. And I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to come on the show was because I listened to some of the other shows and listened to how people talk about things that they've been through. And I went through, between being in the corporate world and some of the deaths that I had early on in my family. I really struggled, a little bit with, self-confidence and, self-doubt and things like that. And reading turned into my world. And what it ended up being was, um, you know, I tried to take that energy and learn what I was, through what I was reading. And what I didn't know was, as you read a book by Vince Flynn or whoever, you're taking a master class in their novel. So I used,
Tell me
what I had
more.
at my,
Yeah.
I used what I had at my disposal to try and become a writer. And I think everybody has that inside them. They just have to kind of get out of their own way and, you know, find their purpose through something, going through something like that.
Well, that is fascinating. I love tying to, I mean, I'm sure there's not a single listener that has ever had any confidence problems ever.
Well,
Ever, right? And I can say, being in the corporate world and having challenging jobs and challenging bosses and scenarios, that even the strongest, most confident, or the people maybe even think that are the strongest, most confident, then start to second guess themselves. Am I good at this? am I supposed to
Right.
be doing this? Am I good at anything?
Right.
All the stories we tell ourselves in our own head. And I actually
Yeah.
didn't say stories in our own head as it ties to books on purpose. That was an accident.
No,
So I'm not that witty, but I would love to be that witty. So anyways, but the stories we
yeah,
tell about ourselves in our head, right,
yeah.
is fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and the corporate world it's a beast to itself, and it sometimes it can produce the most creative things, from yourself when you're trying to, map out a process or resolve a problem. But from it also depends to me, in my opinion, in my experience, it all depends on the leadership down and how they treat the people and how um, how much they look to the lower tier employees to innovate and to help them move the business. And early on in my career, it was pretty good, but as I stayed longer in that one company, which I cannot name and probably shouldn't, but yeah, it became more and more difficult. So at one point I was just like, well, what am I waiting for? If the worst thing that's going to happen is either A, I don't get published, or I don't publish. So at that point there was no reason for me not to try and write the novel that I had in my head.
so I'm envisioning, and I mean, the reality is this, and we've done a lot of talks about leadership, and oh my gosh, the episode that we just released last weekend, yes, this last weekend, man, time flies. Hear These Truths, Jeff Clark's leadership book. Oh my gosh,
Mm,
I when I
yeah.
read that book, I took Matt 10 pages of notes. I was constant. I mean, I have all these flags on it, all these highlights. I'm obsessed with leadership and growing solid and amazing teams. And I
Hmm.
have been the victim of a horrible
Hmm.
bosses, right? And you
Right.
sit
Yeah.
there and you think, okay, wait, we only live once.
Yeah.
And my now we're all having technical problems. My light just went off. We only live once. Life is entirely too short to spend that much time being miserable doing what you're doing. And if you have a
Absolutely.
confidence challenge, then I think a lot of individuals stay in. Well, I had this conversation actually 2 weeks ago with some friends, and we were talking about work, and they said, "Ange, like most people hate their jobs. That's just how it is." And I was like, well, but why
Mm,
is that just how it is? I mean, why are we not
that
challenging the status quo?
right. Yeah. That should be the exception and not the rule.
Yes. Yes.
And it's easy when you've been at a place for a long time, like I had. Um, you know, a lot of things kind of entered in my head. Well, I've got a lot of PTO. I'm invested in a lot of different benefits. If I leave, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to leave, I'm going to lose that. So it's easier just to ride it out. And the um, I'll call it abuse that you take during the corporate years, or from the top down. You just kind of become numb to it, and it plays hell on you. It really does. And then when you're not getting um, the recognition that you think you deserve, I mean, it's another just double whammy that it just, and you can't allow something to really hit you like that. And I accepted it far longer than I should have, and it definitely played hell on me. But I definitely discovered liberation through A, reading, and B, writing.
I love that. And I love that you said abuse. I've mentioned before in situations with particular bosses that are a challenge is that it feels very much like at some point an abusive parent situation or abusive spouse or something like that, and it's because I find for myself being in that and being in a culture like that,
Hmm.
it's almost
Yeah.
like when you hear of children who are severely abused and they don't know that everyone else's home is not like that. They
Right.
think,
Yeah.
and they think this is the norm. They think this is acceptable and all of that. And it's not until, for me, I at one point also worked in finance, and I was really good at it. And I
Yeah.
absolutely hated it. I hated it, hated it. And I remember when I quit working in finance and I went back to school at Georgia Tech at 29 with a single mom with a special needs 2-year-old. And also at Georgia Tech, they were all like 18-year-old students, right? And here's this like
Right. Yeah.
29-year-old dragging this little girl with her little snacks and stuff to study hall. Definitely thinking, am I too old for this? Right? But I mean, gosh, now we're however many years later. I've just had a very successful career and been able to build some
Yeah.
really amazing companies. And I never would have been able to do that. And even in those ventures, I've had myself stuck with some horrible bosses and horrible situations and endured
Yeah.
those entirely too long, and found myself with my therapist talking about these things and him saying,
Right.
no, you're really great. And you forget those core values within yourself when the noise on the outside is so loud.
Yeah, I mean the noise can really be deafening. And I mean, when I left that company, I finally gotten into a situation where I had a good boss, but the writing was on the wall. And I am now with a new company now that, takes their values and their culture very, 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 very seriously, and much more professionally. It's amazing. It's like you see the greener pastures. But I mean, it can, when you're in an environment like that, it can really play hell on you. And it's so amazing. It kind of shows how resilient humans really are, because we're sitting there and we're taking it. We're just sitting there and we're just
Yes.
taking it. We're just taking it. We're taking it. But we're not smart enough to try and get out of it. And for me, it was just in a position where I was a big subject matter expert, and a lot of people that colleague wise, colleague wise was really never really a problem. We all enjoyed being around each other and working with each other. It was the leadership from the top down that was really the problem for the most part. And but anyway, so I knew if I left, I was going to be leaving a lot of people hanging, and that was tough. That was tough because there were people who really, depended on me, and that was a good feeling. And but the straw that broke the camel's back at one point was, I applied for a new job, and I applied for it with a guy that I thought I had a good relationship with, and he's like, I'm not. He walked straight in, barely asked me one question. He's like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to put you up for this job because I don't think you're a go-getter. And no one had ever, number one, that wasn't true. Number two, nobody has ever said that to me, especially in a professional environment. And I was beyond stunned. And I was like, you know what? I think that's it for me here. I mean, because if this is the kind of culture that supports, a so-called manager, uh, saying that to someone who's trying to better themselves, then A, he's not a good leader, and this is not a place I want to be. So,
And so what did you
uh,
do? You go get a new job, which is what you did.
yeah. So I got yeah. So I wrote three books. I got a new job, and I'm with a management a company and a manager that I love. I would lay down in front of traffic for these guys. So. So you can't believe when things like that happen to you. You know, it's easy to believe it for a while just because you're so stunned. But in the end, you know what kind of person you are and what kind of person you are, what kind of worker you are, what kind of worker you're not. And it was a punch to the gut. But in the end, you got to snap yourself out of it. Like you're not that person. And whatever issue it was on his side. So I don't know what it was, but it helped me write three books and go and move on. So it worked out in the end. But that's it. Statements like that, they can, in the corporate world, they can really hurt you. They can really hurt you.
Well, and when I interviewed Elizabeth Hamilton Garino in her book, The Change Guidebook, she walks through a lot of, and each is 10 chapters, which
Hmm.
she did because on purpose, because you should not compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10. So it is a journey, and
Absolutely.
she was amazing putting that together. And I think one of the things that I love about what you're saying and about her message is to encourage listeners to take a step back, and instead of, writing down all of the awful things, that are being said, maybe take a moment and write down all of the assets that you bring to yourself, to the world around you. Throw those down on a piece of paper
Yeah.
over a number of days. Ask people around you to also write down those amazing things about you and focus on those. And then take a step back and say, okay, I'm miserable in this relationship that I'm in. Okay. So it could be a
Hmm.
work relationship, it could be anything. Okay. I'm
Hmm.
miserable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write
Right.
down all these assets. I'm going to ask other people to do so. And then I'm going to look at the conglomerate of information and say, what can I do for the rest of my days that I'm going to love with these assets that I have? And then go
Yeah.
get it and do it. Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea. And I would also say that whenever one of the things that I learned is that whenever you experience a setback or I guess a bad opinion like that I had, setbacks are not the end of your story. They're the start of your comeback story.
I love
And
it.
and that is one of the things that I had to take a very honest assessment of myself, what I do right, what I do wrong, and take the things that either I'm not happy about or the things that I'm doing wrong and try and find a way to right them, make corrections in whatever journey it was that I'm on, and that was okay, you've got this weight on you. It's time to let it go, and let's go forward, because you can't be one person's opinion of you does not define you, and you should not. No one should ever let one moment, one failure, one moment in time, one opinion stop you for what you want to do. And if you want a new job, go get it. If you want to pursue something different, go pursue it. There's no limits to what people can do. And as Les Brown says, I love listening to Les Brown. Les
Oh,
Brown says
yes.
it's possible. If you have a dream, that's all you have to tell yourself, is it's possible. It doesn't mean it's going to come true, but if you hang on to the fact that it's possible, you'll at least see it through. And you can't finish something unless you start it first.
Yep, yep, absolutely. So I'm envisioning you. I'm trying to like picture you going up and saying, "Here, sign my book." And by the way, almost like in your head, because I think all of us have this little child in our head, right? That's giddy
Yeah.
and wants to do something. Almost like in this little head, like
Yeah.
this fan, like, I
Yeah.
want to be just like you one day. Tell
Yeah.
me how to be just like you one day, right? And
Yeah.
and he was like, go, like, what are you standing? He basically, what are you standing here getting my autograph for? Go do it and give your
Yeah.
autograph out, which is what you did. Now,
Yeah.
that is a leap, which I'm sure you had a lot of doubting moments through that, and time when you were writing drafts. I talked to a lot of authors, and I know that period of writing drafts and getting edits and critiques can be challenging. So how did you handle that? I mean, yeah, you stepped back, and what, this was 2000 or 2018, right? And the book was
That was
published in
2018.
2021, 2019. Okay.
Uh, the first one was 2021. Yeah, 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, and so from that moment, I just decided that no more excuses. Okay. From that moment, I was like, nothing is going to stand in my way from writing and finishing this book. Now, the first draft that I wrote of Surviving the Lion's Den, my debut novel, was very, very different and much, much longer than the finished product. So the second draft was, the first draft was kind of like, blah, let's just get it out and see what I can do with it. And then the second draft was pretty much what you see in the finished product. So all the edits and stuff didn't really bother me. Um, Maybe they bother some people. I view the delete key as my friend, because if
I
it
love
doesn't
it.
work, then what are you using it for? I mean, anything that's going to keep you from moving forward is going to keep the reader from being confused or not reading. You just get rid of. So anything, I went through. There was one. I remember there was one chapter or one section of the first draft. I think it was 30,000 words. I did a lot of research on the embassy in Tehran, the old U.S. embassy in Tehran, which is now a museum, an anti-American museum. It's the Museum of Spies, or Den of Spies is what they call it. So I did, my wife is not going to let me go. And if I did, she's not going to pay the ransom for me. So I, so I had to do the research on my own and find out, what it looks like, you turn left, you go here. And so it ended up being about 30,000 words and I couldn't use it. So I looked at it as, okay, it was a learning experience. I was proud of what I wrote, but it's just not going to work. So let's just get rid of it and move on. And edits never really bothered me. The only time I really got upset is when the editor for my novel would send back notes, and in a very, we'll just call it a very Bronx attitude, he would just say, "No, big, she would not say this." I'm like, listen here, dude. Nobody knows my characters better than me. So if you got some suggestions, I'll be willing to hear it. But don't just say things like that. So that's the only time I really got upset. But edits never really bothered me, just because my process, between outlining and just sitting down and doing it. At least for these novels, knock wood, it keeps going like this. I was able to just stick with my process and things. I allowed things to flow. But on the David Baldacci story, he was actually here this past Memorial Day weekend in Charlotte, and I got to meet him again, and I got to tell him that story. And
Oh,
he was really, we were both kind of like, I was definitely more emotional than he was, but you could
allergies.
tell, yeah, you could tell that he was really honored that happened, and that I remembered, because I took a picture of it and I had him sign the picture of us together from that day.
Right.
And you could tell he was very warm by the story I told him. And then I went to go see him he was the guest of honor at BoucherCon in San Diego, and he recognized me by face. So I guess we haven't exactly exchanged phone numbers, but I'm considering
You're
us
not on
friends.
Christmas card list yet?
No, not yet, not yet. But
Hey,
he did take my novel and he said he would read it. So I'll take that as a win.
I'm sure he's probably already bought the others as well. So you basically said, I'm going to write a book. You wrote a book and published it in 2 years, and then you've written a new book each year
Yeah,
subsequently, right?
yeah. My funny
That's a
story. So
lot.
yes, yeah. So it was really hard at one point because when I got my agent, she got the publisher that I have now, and she says, okay, the publisher likes it, but he doesn't just want one book, he wants three. So what are your other two ideas? So I vaguely had two ideas in my head for books two and three, and I just kind of spouted them off. And she's like, okay, I'll call you right back. And he took it. So that was good news, but they put me on a really, really tight timeline. So at one point, the first one had come out. I was working my 8 to 5. I was editing or marketing the second one, and I was in the middle of writing the third one. So essentially, I was doing four jobs at once, and mid 2022 ish. And so it was quite hectic. They put me on a tight timeline. So um, that was probably the toughest part of the process because I really didn't get a break. They say take a break between the novels. Well, that really wasn't an option for me. I think between books two and three, I took maybe 2 weeks,
Oh my
and
gosh. Wow.
and just yeah, and just started and just went right into it because I was so scared that I was going to lose, my mojo, or lose my train of thought. So I just went into it, and thankfully, the idea that I had in my head uh, came out the way I wanted it to.
Wow. Yeah, you basically took a 2 week vacation, which probably wasn't a vacation because you were probably also working all the other things at the exact same time.
Oh yeah, at night I'm still on my phone. I'm still trying to post stuff on social media, trying to figure out what times that are best to post these things. What's going
Yes.
on in the world, what's going on in the world that mirrors my books. I'm trying to help other authors, promote their stuff, because that's one of the things that I've really discovered about this is that the writing community, everyone is so, so supportive of one another. So,
Yeah.
because once one of us makes it big, the reader is going to read that book. Okay, well, who else is, out there? So, you try and, promote their other stuff. And so it never really stops. And during that 2 weeks, I may not have been writing, but between the social media and, reading books, and I was still doing more research on some of the locations in takedown there, because that's one of the things I was really the most proud of. Is when I read the Da Vinci Code, I loved the way Dan Brown took the audience on a tour of Europe, and I
Yeah.
wanted to do that with Iran, because Westerners don't know Iran. I mean,
No.
not since '78 anyway, '79, sorry. Um, so I had to really do a lot of research, and I wanted to take them on that tour, and that was really the probably the most fun I had was researching it, finally getting way finding a way to write about it, and intertwining it with my plot.
So I know in your press kit, one of the questions that you often get asked, and I am going to ask it because I'm all about getting to know humans as humans and people and culture as
Hmm.
people and culture. So I love the question that ties to, what did you learn about the culture that other people don't know? That is like the view from the outside. You think it's this way, but actually when you get, and I've traveled all over the world, and when
Hmm.
I travel, I like to go to the local restaurant and stay in all. I don't
Absolutely.
want to go to anything touristy at all. I
No,
actually
no.
hate tourists. So sorry, tourists. I
Yeah,
think, I like to dig in. So tell us
yeah.
some of those things that you often share.
Well, the funny thing was, I think when I had just finished the second book, and the I can't remember her name, but there was an Iranian girl. I think she was 16 years old, that got bludgeoned by the Revolutionary Guard. So it started this big Ayatollah movement, and some of the Iranian community here in Charlotte, they were having these rallies, and my wife and I ran into some of them. Outside a restaurant when we were waiting for our table. And we just started talking to them, and a lot of the stuff that I put in my book, was based on research, but you know, uh, not a whole lot of Iranians around here that I knew, and I didn't, that even the community here is very, very small. So one of the things that I really learned was, there is the state media of Iran wants you to think that they all hate us, and they don't. They are under an iron fist and under the thumb of the Ayatollahs just as much as some of the other oppressed people in the world. Whether it be for communism or whatever. So they're struggling too. And the sanctions that the United States and the West have been forced to put on Iran, uh, for sake of trying to break the back of the Ayatollah government, uh, while necessary, they do end up hurting the local Iranians, whose economy basically runs on the black market. So when I wrote the character of Farad and Danya in the third book, I really wanted people to see Iran through their eyes, and see, that they struggle too. Are there the zealots that are shouting "Death to Israel, Death to America"? Yes, there are. I mean,
Everywhere.
that's indisputable. That's indisputable, right? But from the documentaries that I've watched, and the books that I've read, and things like that, what I've seen is, you know, uh, most of the Iranian people are very welcoming, from everything that I can see, and that's good to know, because I think a time will come when the Ayatollah government is no longer there. I can't tell you whether it's going to be sooner or later. With everything that's going on over there right now, I would bet on sooner. But a lot of dominoes have to fall in order for that to happen. I mean, my book, Ayatollah Takedown, was a fictionalized version of what I think it could look like, and I play a little bit and have some fun with it. But the real world there's going to be a lot more real life dominoes that have to fall in order for that to happen. So I think it will happen, but not everyone was over there that is like that. And man, the one thing I can tell you about the Iranians, they love their food. They are big
Absolutely.
foodies. They are big foodies, man,
Yes.
which is
And
so
amazing
cool.
food.
Yeah,
Amazing
they have
food.
really good food. Yeah, one of the things that I did when after I got published the first novels, I went out and bought a Persian cookbook. My wife and I had to pick out a meal to cook, and my wife was kind of like, I don't know about this, but
Right.
she's a good cook, and it ended up coming out really really well.
Well, I hope she hears that shout out when she listens to the podcast. She's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yes, you wanted to have dinner that night, so you didn't answer that question correctly.
yeah, absolutely,
Smart man.
absolutely.
Smart man. Actually, one of the things that I have found in traveling all over the world and I spent 3 months in China studying Mandarin. I've forgotten
Wow.
almost all my Mandarin, but I spent 3 months in China studying Mandarin as a study abroad when I was at Georgia
Hmm.
Tech,
Hmm.
and have spent time in Mozambique and Zambia and Haiti and South America
Wow.
and stuff. In some of these tiny villages, actually, I remember. I'll tell you this one story. This was in Mozambique, and we were doing a 100 wells program. So we're building 100 wells, the
Hmm.
challenge with clean
Yep.
water. Okay. And
Sure. Sure.
I like to, if I serve and do something, I want to do it in a way that's giving something to the community that's going to be a building structure. Right. So we did
Hmm.
the wells in Guatemala. I participated in a program where we're building a medical clinic, which is cool. I got to learn how to mix concrete and lay block and tie rebar and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, but in Mozambique at night, we were having this conversation. We split up the men and the women, and the women were all like asking us these questions via translator, but they were like challenges they were having with their husbands. Like, how do you get your husbands to like go to work and do a hard job? It was hysterical because we're all like, okay, you're human. You're having the exact same challenges. I'm
Yeah.
just using that as an example because I can
Sure. Yeah.
picture
Yeah.
this lady's, she's just so passionate about it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But
Right.
what I have learned in life is that humans are humans, regardless of where they're at. And most people are really good people. And they want to be loving. They want to be in some sense of community with other people. And excuse me, once, if you take the time to get to know them as people and
Hmm.
listen to them and show them
Right.
that you see them, wow, it's a whole different conversation between countries and communities and whatnot. And I think that's
Yeah.
everywhere. So I love that you brought that into this.
Yeah. I think it's definitely important. I mean, because people are all people are that's all we have in this world. We're all here. I mean, when we're gone, maybe the dinosaurs come back. I don't know, but I mean, I mean, in the meantime, we're the ones that are in control of our own destiny, how we want the world to work. So it's just unfortunate that as always, the bad apples spoil the the bush, whatever it is, and cause some of the wars and things like that to really happen, and it causes the oppression to happen and the indoctrination uh, to happen because we're really not that different. It's just the beliefs of what we think happens when we die or whatever the case may be. I think you have to be careful, but in the end, people to people, we all, like JFK said, breathe the same air. Our hearts all beat. We all care about, our parents and our kids and things like that. So
Our
if we can
dogs
get
or
past,
whatever the
oh
animal
yeah,
is.
definitely our dogs, and certainly in my life. I'm looking at 3 pictures of dogs on this wall here that my wife couldn't live without.
Well, you see
So,
mine behind me is I guess on that side, yeah, is my previous service dog who passed away.
oh,
And
okay.
he his name was Kuba. Absolutely amazing,
Oh,
amazing
very
dog.
nice.
Yeah. And Allie
Oh, that's so
Rains,
good.
yeah, she does, scratch board. So it is,
Oh,
with the
nice.
pencil and stuff. It is
That is
absolutely,
really cool.
absolutely amazing.
That is really cool.
So
That
I
is
can
really cool.
appreciate, yeah, the
Yeah.
the love of that. Okay, so what was your next challenge, or what do you have up next? What journey should we take the listeners on next?
Uh, well, the next, I can tell you that I've started writing a new novel. I can't tell you much about it.
Did you
I
take
can
more
tell
than
you,
2 weeks off?
yeah, I've taken more than 2 weeks off. Yeah, I took more than 2 weeks off. So I am in search of a new agent. I parted ways with my other one. We just didn't see eye to eye. So I think, it will not involve Iran, but there will be some type of, maybe not international, but it will certainly be a conspiracy type thriller. That's just where my heart is. I do have a little bit of a guilty pleasure towards, horror novels or horror movies. So I can't quite let that go. I don't know if I can ever write one. We'll see. But
Oh,
so I am starting to work on a new one. When it'll be out, who it'll be published by, those things are yet to be determined for me because this is I think this is going to be a new journey for me because I'm going to take the lessons that I've learned from the first round and uh, do them a little bit different. I think do them a little bit slower, evaluate the process a little bit differently.
how would you
Publishing.
how would you do it slow? You mean do it slower as in like writing the series of the books? Now that you're established, I guess you could push back on deadlines in the beginning a little bit more because you have a better understanding. Is that what you're talking about slower, or is there something else you're thinking about as far as slower?
No, I'm talking the writing part is I've gotten my process down to the point where I won't call it a science, but it's something that I'm comfortable with.
A
So the writing
cadence you're
part,
comfortable with?
yeah, I won't say it's easy because I don't think anything's truly easy, but that's the part that comes the most organically. I guess the piece that I'm talking about, taking differently is the process of getting an agent, getting a publisher, going through the business side, because that's where a lot of the issues that I experienced along the way of this first three kind of came about. So I want to make sure that I get the right people involved. And now that I do have three out, I do have contacts. I made some friends along the way. You mentioned Jeff Clark. There's some others that I now have in my phone that actually do have in my phone. Joe Goldberg, Steve Stratton, Steve Yerzeni, guys like that. So there's a little bit more of a support blanket there for me, and if I need it, I mean, obviously, I can't call one of them and say, how would you get through this? They're not going to tell me that. They're going to tell me it's your book, you write it.
Right,
But I
exactly.
mean, there are things that, when you have, others that are in the industry, you can kind of, when you surround yourself with good people, you're going to have a better chance of success. So I think, this time around, I'm not, I don't feel, sorry, my wife was leaving. I don't feel quite as, alone in this journey like I was before, simply because when I say alone in this journey, I mean, like I've never been a part of the publishing industry. I was like everybody else. I was reading the books and I had ideas for books. That's it. So now, after I have three published, I've gone to BoucherCon, I made some friends. I'm hoping that the process will be, quote unquote, a little easier.
It will.
But yeah, I hope so. But I definitely I will evaluate my options a little bit more because when you're first writing and you want your first book out, I mean, it's such a dream. You'll take just about anything, right?
Yeah.
Um, so this time around, I think I want it to be a little bit different because I mean, it would be a dream of mine to write full time. Obviously, that I'm still not doing that. I still have a new job that I'm working 8 to 5 at, and I do some writing at night. That's usually my process. So hopefully that'll go differently. And if it doesn't, I've still written three. Hopefully, a fourth, and I'll move on to the next challenge. But for right now, um, I'm not willing to give up. It's just that's writing during this whole process. There's been nothing that's made me happier than writing myself into a corner and be like, oh my God, how am I going to write this character out of this? I had no idea, and then writing and being in the moment and figuring out how to do it. It's like, oh my God, how did I do that? So then I usually go downstairs and have a celebratory shot of Jack Daniels just to like, yeah, good job. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like the writing part. It for me, it is so organic. It is one of the most natural things I've ever done professionally, anyway. So I'm not willing to short myself on it. And even if it doesn't work out, I'd like to try and find a way to stay in, the business. I've talked to a couple of people about maybe starting a podcast on about, the process, or maybe the thriller genre, or, anything like that. But I'm not willing to give up yet, and I don't give up easy. So I'm hoping that
I don't
this
think you
next
do.
one, whatever, yeah, no, I'm hoping this next one, whatever it's going to be, I don't even have a title for it yet. Um, but I've got some good ideas that I'm excited about. So I'm sorry that was such a long-winded answer.
No apologies are allowed on this podcast. You can give your answers as long as you want. And I'm sure the listeners would love to send you an email and let you know what you should name your next book and what it should be about. So I'll let you give them your details in a little bit. One of the things that I love that I hadn't thought about, but I love about what you were talking about is I think that so much in life, it's like when you get your first job at some point, right? You just like, I don't care, like who's ever going to hire me. I
hmm
need a job, right? And then as you start to grow your career and you learn more about what you're good at, what you love, how you work and collaborate with others.
Right,
When I hire team members for my companies, I'm very adamant with them. Okay, I'm interviewing you, but you
hmm
also are interviewing us. You're interviewing me, you're interviewing your colleagues, you're interviewing the company. This is a two-way street.
yeah,
And this is and so I love that idea of thinking, okay, my agent, my publishers, I'm going to be like this, collaborating with them. This journey is going to be either more enjoyable or more painful based on finding team members that have the same values, that collaborate in the same
right,
way, that we can
right,
be better together. And
right.
that's, I think, takes a little bit of time to try and step back. And now you've worked with some agents and you have some ideas about that. What would you say when you're looking for an agent? What are some of the key characteristics that really help you be the best author you can be?
Well, in terms of finding a good agent, I can't really give you a good answer because I haven't found a good one yet. But in terms of, what brings out the best in me as an author, I would say from the standpoint of looking for a collaborator on the other side of the desk that can help me. I want somebody that's going to stay positive. I want somebody that is going to give me, if they give me a critique feedback, do it professionally, like something like, I'm not seeing a lot of this character, but I really like him. Is there a way you can, find a way to put him in, or I'm not quite sure where you're going, or if this character would say that. You might want to rethink it. So, you know, I look for professionalism. For me is really important, because you have to be able in this, especially in this business, you have to be able to accept feedback. You have to. I
Oh,
mean, it is
absolutely.
it's absolutely critical. And if you're not willing to take it, then you're not going to get it very far. Because I want somebody who's going to push me to be better, and pushing me to be better is often going to mean giving me answers that I don't want to hear. But we all want to have the same goal, and the same goal is going to be to produce the best book possible that can be published and will get in the hands of readers who want to read it. And as long as we have that common goal, I'm gonna want you on my team. And I think the first time around, I don't want to go too much into it, but I think I did a little bit too much trusting on the other side of the table, rather
Well,
than
I think it's
uh,
natural in the beginning because you don't know what you
it
don't know.
is. Right. And it
And
was and it was especially hard for me when you're so green. But at the time I was 42, 41, 42 when I got my first agent, so it kind of burned me a bit to be 42 and be making mistakes of a 22-year-old. But again, when you don't know what you don't know, it's easier to get burned. And that kind of always upset me a little bit about myself, that I didn't take the necessary steps that I probably should have taken. But when you want to be published and you want that dream to come true, you're just trying to make it happen, make it happen, make it happen, make it happen. And then in a lot of cases, that's not bad because you can't reach the heights of things if you don't get your foot in the door
Right,
first.
right, right, right.
So, I mean, and like anything else, and I'm sure you agree, with your businesses, you can't be the best unless you make mistakes. Um,
Absolutely.
so,
Absolutely.
I think I made a little bit more than I probably wanted to, but
You're an overachiever in the mistake world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So hopefully, hopefully this time I've learned enough. But I think, for anybody that's looking for a good agent, myself included, we're looking for somebody that's going to be in your corner and really help you, and they're going to have the connections that you're looking for, and certainly, and this is a big one, they're not going to find a way to charge you erroneously for things that you should not be charged. Um, because once you get a good publisher, everything is on their side, and so I would definitely keep that in mind because the literary world certainly is full of scammers. One of the things that I can tell you is between email, I had somebody contact me that had a very well built book review site and book reviews from big names like Mark Greaney, Jack Carr, guys like this, and they were really hyping themselves up. They went through a lot of work to convince people of who they were, and they were not who they were.
Wow.
And it's and all they want is give me $500 and I'll give you the review, and you'll I'll get the word out here at my socials, or you look at my social accounts. I got 32,000 followers, blah 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 blah. And Instagram is very, I think Instagram is great for authors. It's also a well or a pond for people that want to hype your book and also want the money for the review, and they all say the same thing. We're going to get you this many likes, and
Oh yeah.
this many. Yeah, so I mean you do have to be careful, and there were things that I certainly that I fell for, that I shouldn't have, and I didn't have the right people in my corner to guide me. I had my instinct, which was save me sometimes and didn't save me sometimes. So this time I think I'm going into it, the process, the business world, a little bit more with my eyes open. And unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that's just the process. You're not going to hit a home run the first time up. Very, very few people do that. I mean, Baldacci was able to do it. Jack Carr, I think, was able to do it, but that's pretty rare. But even those people had the right people in their corner. So, um, but don't give up.
The
When you
world is
got
way more full. Is that the way I want to put it? There are way more people in the world who were not successful the first time, and the ones who are resilient and didn't give up. I love those are the best stories. It's
oh
the
yeah,
the Tom Hanks League of Your Own. If it were easy, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. And
absolutely, great
those are the
quote.
great. Yes, love, love, love that. And
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about, I think you looking for an agent, it's also like you want a coach, is basically what you want. You want a good coach who has your back. And what success looks like for them is you being successful in all these different areas. And if you're successul, they're
Exactly.
successful. That is what you're looking for, is a good coach. And
Exactly.
I think that
Exactly.
also it applies to so many things in life, right? It applies to
Right.
looking for a job when you're interviewing with your potential manager, right? Is as Jeff Clark would say, is this person a leader or are they a boss? You don't want a boss.
Yeah, you want a
You want a
leader.
leader
Yeah.
who's going to be a
Yeah.
coach, and you take a step and say, okay, I'm going to work for this person. Am I going to be able to learn from this person? Am I going to be able to grow from this individual, from this company, from this situation, from this
Right.
environment, and not
Absolutely.
sell yourself short for fear that no one else is going to take you at some point. Like hold out for the good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, don't ever let anybody take advantage of you. You got to make, decisions that you think are right for yourself. You're not going to bat 1,000. That's just the way it is. Like Denzel Washington said, you will fail. Don't worry about it. You will fail, but don't give up. And one of the things that, you mentioned resiliency. I love listening to, actors and, all these other people who started out small. The best one that I love, whose story I love to listen to, is John Paul DeJorio, who started Paul Mitchell Hair Products.
I've never heard his
He
story.
Really? Okay, so
I've never
I'll
heard it.
give you the quick I'll give you the
Yes,
quick version. So
love it.
he was married to, or I think he was engaged to, this one woman, and he was living in her place, and he was giving her rent money, and she was banking it, and then one day she just left. So at one point he was homeless, but he had the formula for Paul Mitchell hair products, and he was going door to door to sell it. And at one point, he was homeless. Now, one of the things about Paul Mitchell hair products that people don't realize is that if you look at the Paul Mitchell hair products bottle, it's white with black lettering. That's all it is,
Right,
and it's iconic now. But
right.
at the time, it was all he could afford, and now it's this
It's like the
iconic
cheapest
thing.
bottle and the cheapest ink.
Absolutely. And now, it's this $1 billion product that, people can't live without, and it's still cheap, so it saves on cost. And he went from being homeless to being a billionaire, and I think he's biggest thing I think he's involved in right now is Patron tequila, which again makes him my best friend. But I love stories of resiliency. So one of the things that I heard along the way is, your struggle is your story. No one wants to hear a story about someone who got everything they wanted from the beginning, was born with a silver spoon, and went on to be president, or have $1 billion company. Who wouldn't want the money, right? But I mean, it's a boring story.
Right.
Everybody wants to hear a story about how you overcame something, and that's why stories of, one of the historical icons that I love is Jesse Owens. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
everything that he went through was, just, I mean, you can't even imagine it. I mean, as racially divided as the country was, you know, during the 60s and things like that. It was worse in, the 30s and 40s, and he faced Hitler, basically nose to nose, and won. I mean, in I mean, I cannot think there are fewer victories that are really greater than that. When you talk about how evil, the
Yeah.
Nazi Empire really was. And but so, when you fall down, don't be afraid to get back up. I mean, and if you're me, you get knocked down, and you keep getting knocked down, you keep getting knocked down. As long as you keep getting back up, the world's going to get the sign that you're not going to give up. And like Babe Ruth said, it's hard to beat a guy that won't quit.
Absolutely. One of my, so I obviously love quotes, hence why a requirement of the podcast is everyone has to have a motivational quote. I have quite a few motivational quotes tattooed on me. And one of
Oh,
them, yes, one of them, so I'll tell you what they all are. So, of course, one is be brave, be badass, which is my own hashtag that I started about 12 years
hmm,
ago, which I can't even believe. I look back now, you know how you look back at your younger self? And I'm like, wow, like that was badass of me to think I should come up with a hashtag be brave, be badass back then.
right,
But
yeah,
the
yeah,
meaning behind that hashtag is that I believe everyone has their own personal badass in them. And what's my
indeed.
badass and what Matt's badass is are different things. It doesn't matter. We have our own personal badass. And I think a lot of
Hmm.
people are afraid to be brave enough to reach their own personal badass. So be brave, be
Yeah.
badass means be brave enough to be your own personal badass. So that's one of them. I also have
Hmm.
one that says courage to do what's right, undaunted by repeated setbacks,
I like
perseverance in
that
the
one.
storm. But the one that I'm thinking of for what you just said is I have a Yoda tattoo that
Nice.
says fall down 7, get up 8, which is a Japanese and Chinese proverb that
Oh
is
yeah.
exactly
Yep.
that. It is you keep getting knocked down, don't stay down at whatever that time is. Just keep getting back up.
Yeah, and I think one of the ones that stayed with me for a while is the guy that runs Impact Theory, Tom Bayou. He came out with an album a couple years ago, and one of them, it said, he said, "I've heard it said that hell means that when you reach the other side, you see yourself and you don't even recognize yourself. But that heaven is to meet yourself on the other side and see yourself staring back at you. I'm muddling the quote a bit because I don't have it in front of me, but I mean that's essentially,
I think you got it pretty
the
spot on, actually. I
yeah.
read it
So I mean,
earlier because you submitted it earlier to me, and I
oh,
think
did
you
I?
did it.
I didn't even remember. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
so
it's
sorry. I didn't
great.
even.
No, that's perfect. And I was going to ask you your favorite quote, and then you started talking about. I was like, okay, he's just going to give me one of his favorite quotes.
I
So
did it inadvertently. I guess it worked out.
it totally worked out. It totally worked out. But yeah, you know what? Because there are a lot of people who actually I think don't live life. You know, they don't
Yeah,
sit and look at themselves and say, "Who am I? What is my
right,
purpose?" In Jeff Clark's book, we talk a lot about purpose, and
right.
you can't define your purpose for someone else if you don't know what your purpose is and you don't know who you are as a
Absolutely,
human being. And I think a lot of
absolutely.
people die without living and doing exactly that. Like, no, live.
Absolutely. It's yeah, it's not just about it's just not I'm sorry, my dogs are barking at
No,
each
I
other.
love it.
It's
I
not
love it.
it's not about surviving. It is about living. And the people that find their purpose in life are the ones that I think live the happiest. And one of the biggest motivations I think I can tell people is that do you not know or do you not realize that there are people out in this world that have less money than you, are less intelligent than you, and less drive than you, and yet
And are more
they are
successful.
living and they are living their dreams.
Yep.
So if you have even if you have a little bit more money, a little bit more intelligence, a little bit more drive, I am really sorry about this. This
I
is the
think
way they
it's
play with each other.
hysterical. No,
I'm so sorry.
the dog is like, yes,
This is the
yes,
dog in the
yes,
fight. Yeah, this is the
yes.
dog in the fight. So yeah, it's oh my god, it's so I'm trying to make this as professional as I can, but I can't help it. They're doing their own thing in the background. But I mean, so just keep that in mind. Is that you can do it. You can do it. Just don't let yourself
Hang on.
don't
Is
talk
it
yourself
still
out of doing
recording?
something.
Yeah, okay. Is it still
Yeah,
recording? Okay, yeah.
you went dark.
I
You went dark for a second.
yeah,
But
it had a
yeah, you
problem, but
can do it. Yeah, you
you
can
can.
do this. You
Yes.
can do this. Just, turn on your drive, turn on your passion, and turn off your fear. That
Love
that I
it.
think is the best. And that's another quote from one of the motivational songs that I bought from iTunes. I wish I could take credit for it, but those are the things. When I started trying to convince myself that it was time to write, I listened to all those motivation songs and tapes and speeches, and um, they help push me in the direction that I think I needed to be pushed.
I know. I think this is perfect. One of my brothers, when he went to school at Georgia Tech, he used to say that when he before an exam and he was walking across campus to the exam, he would listen to like Eye of the Tiger, and
Oh yeah,
I remember him telling me that. And so as I've grown up in life, so I had recently a very important call I needed to do. So before the
mm-hmm.
call, I, I love Eminem. Before the call, I'm listening
Yeah,
to Till I Collapse and
yo,
Lose
I love
Yourself.
that.
You know, I'm
Yep,
like getting in here. I'm like, yes, I can do it. I can do it.
I
And
think
that mindset is so important towards
it is.
reading that.
No, it really is. And I think you and I, our playlists would be very, very similar because, I think it really would because there's nothing, I think starting off your day with reading a motivational quote or listen to a motivational song is one of the best ways to start your day. I really,
Absolutely.
I mean, and I'm a person that hates getting up in the morning.
Me too.
I am not a morning person. I get up early in the morning to do three things: go on vacation, go fishing, or go golfing, and that is it. I mean, I do not like. My wife is a breakfast person, and I never like to get up for breakfast. But even if you're groggy, you're like, oh, another day. When that quote kicks in and you start feeling the vibes, I mean, that is money for the soul. It really is. There's fewer things I think that can get you going really well in the morning, give you a good outlook on how your day is going to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so
Uh,
much for having me.
Is there anything that you hoped we would cover that we haven't covered?
No, I think we've covered everything. I would just say for someone that was struggled for a while, I just kind of want to reiterate, you know, A, it's okay to not be okay. B,
Absolutely.
you're gonna be okay. But C, you got to find a way to put down the weight of whatever it is that's keeping you where you are, and you have to find a way to move forward because the present is a gift. That's why it's called the present. So always acknowledge that about yourself, and the best way to find your purpose is to find what it is that makes you happiest. Do what makes you happiest. And if you have to work another job while you're trying to find that, that's fine. That's fine. But when you commit yourself to finding your purpose, because you will find the happiness that you're looking for.
Amazing. Spot on. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today with your coffee and conversation. We hope you've been encouraged and learned something from today's story. To learn more about today's guest, please check out our show notes for more details. Now it's time to remember to like this episode, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. Recovery Advocate Network envisions a world where individuals with mental health challenges receive comprehensive and effective treatment without the worry of financial burdens to themselves or their families, all without the stigmas often present in society. We are proud that every individual worked with RAN does so on a 100% volunteer basis. You can support the mission by making a financial donation via PayPal or Venmo, or email donate@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org if you would like to donate items for our next fundraising auction. Please visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org to learn more. Now, stay in the loop about upcoming events, future episodes, and more by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and all major podcast platforms. As a reminder, the experiences and advice expressed in this episode are the host and guest's own personal stories and do not represent the opinions of any organization mentioned. RAN is passionate about opening the doors for all voices and experiences, not just those expressed in any particular podcast. If you want to share your experiences or expertise, we encourage you to be a future guest by emailing us at podcast@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org or submit a blog by emailing blog@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org. We also encourage you to comment on the episode so that we can continue to provide content that is most beneficial to the community. How do you do that? Visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org, and in the top right corner, click that comment button and comment. So listeners, what do you need to do? Pause what you're doing, subscribe, follow us. Please give us a like and a 5-star rating, write some meaningful comments, and most importantly, share these episodes with your friends. You never know whose heart you will touch, so please be a part of a reason someone has new hope today. If this episode was triggering to you, we encourage you to contact your support system, therapist, national and community support groups, the Global Crisis Text Line by texting 741-741, and/or if in the U.S., dialing 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're in the U.S. and need additional resources such as shelter, support group resources, transportation, food, and/or a safe, confidential path out of physical or emotional domestic abuse, please call 211 or visit www.211info.org for assistance. Now, we know you are very busy, and we are grateful that you said yes to sharing time with us today. If you stuck to our 3 C's of engagement and listened to the full episode, then visit the podcast section of our website and leave the comment about the podcast, and you'll be entered to win an autographed copy of one of the books from one of our book club series, as well as a coffee and conversation coffee mug. So thanks again. Until next time, back to your coffee.